Thanks for doing this with me. How'd you do in that race yesterday?
I ended up third in the Masters, or seventh overall. Took about 26 minutes. It was a little bit windier than I thought. I should have used a smaller foil. I was kind of
What were you
wound up.
using?
I was
Well,
using the 650, the RS 658J, but I
okay.
should have tried one of my smaller ones. I've got a couple 500s, but I hadn't been on a racing winging in a while. We just been wave riding. So I got on that thing and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. It's kind of windy and bumpy out here.
It was windy for Oahu. Was
Yeah, that was the best I'd ever had it over there. That was really good conditions.
where did you guys go from where to where?
We went from China Walls down to what's the name of the park? Just past the Outrigger Club. We finished right there by the windsock.
Oh, you finished by the windsock. You finished at Kaimana.
Yeah, Kaimana, that's where we were.
Oh, so you guys all came in the channel.
Yeah, we all came in the channel.
Oh, and then you just swim it in or something?
Yeah, they just paddle it in.
So 26 minutes?
Yeah, 26 minutes.
What was first place?
I think it was 19 minutes. One of the young kids, there was two young kids that were dueling it out together, and I think they were 26 seconds apart. They were flying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. In the Masters, what was the first place?
I think Robert was 21 minutes,
Hmm.
21 something, maybe 22.
Oh, so Robert won?
Yeah, Robert won the Masters, and then another guy from San Francisco got second.
Did Derek race or no?
No, Derek was doing the finish line. So Derek sailed all the way downwind in front of us, and then he was sitting outside the windsock, and the finish line for the wingers was to go around Derek.
Oh,
He was taking all the results.
okay. And then did Jeff race too?
Jeff did the stand-up paddle class spoiling. So I'm not sure what place Jeff got.
Oh, Jeff wanted to suffer.
He wanted to suffer.
Okay.
He loves suffering now.
Now that you've done that course, what are some takeaways you're learning that you could pass on to us?
That course it's a lot more difficult than it is in Maui, obviously, because we got, bumps that are all lined up and it's better wind conditions in general. But it's a little bit trickier on that Hawaii Kai downwinder that bumps are like all confused and there's like, bumps coming off of the beach from offshore winds blowing out of the valleys and stuff. So it's a little bit more confused and you need a little bit bigger foil in general than you would in Maui. So a little bit, trickier to stay up. But when you're winging, it's different. Winging, you can ride a small foil when it's windy. But
Okay.
when you're stand up, you got to use a slightly bigger foil. Like say in Maui, they might be using 700s. Over there, I think a lot of the guys were using thousands when they were stand up, something around 1,000, 900,000.
Yesterday, I mean, it was probably what, 30-mile-per-hour winds. So it was windy for us. It's not normally that windy.
Yeah.
What would you have used in those conditions if you were going to do the downwind stand up?
Stand up for me,
Yeah.
probably something around 900 or 1,000 square centimeters. And I use a 75 mass and a fairly big board. You kind of need a bigger board over there and, don't get too narrow because it's very choppy over there and not choppy so much as backwash going around. And a lot of the guys say it's hard for them to stand up on their narrow board. So you either got to go longer to try and stabilize yourself or, be one of those top guys that don't have a problem standing on a board.
Okay. Which wing at about 1,000 for you?
I've got a 990 that I like to ride when it's like that. It's a
Okay.
newer wing called the X990. I'm not sure I'm going to put it in production. I'm trying to work on it to see if I can get, something a little bit better before I put it into full production, but there are some available. It's very fast in marginal conditions.
That would be for about what, 170? You're about 170 pounds?
Yeah.
Okay. So what about 200 pounds?
200 pounds. If he's good, he could still ride the same thing.
Okay.
You want to be
Because,
a very good rider though.
last time we chatted, and it's kind of interesting because it's only February. So normally it's Christmas for our talk, but you launching too many new things. So it's only a couple months later. I have to ask you again. But since that last one, I've been riding the 1500, right? The 1300, and then that HA 1125, pretty much exclusively going between those. And I only
Right.
started the HA 1125 maybe a few weeks ago because I never thought I could ride it. I mean, I looked at it, I was like, are you kidding or what? This thing is so like skinny and 1125. I mean, 1250 was the smallest I could ride before on like some significant waves. But after riding it for a few weeks, that's kind of the only one I want to ride. Like it's fast. It lifts, the stall speed is low. I can actually pump it,
Right.
go figure, right? Like I can actually pump it. So would that be the one I take downwind then or still
Yeah,
or
for
you would
you,
still try
I
the big
would
one?
try that one. If you're really suffering, and having problems with that one, then go up to the 1500 just to, stay up. Those waves are pretty fast over there, so it's hard to keep going on the slower wings. But, mainly is you want to just be able to stay up all the time. You don't want to suffer. So go with the 1125 and then maybe go to the 1500 if you're suffering too much.
And the 1500, you wouldn't use the 20-inch tail, would you?
Yep.
Oh, you would use the
Definitely.
20-inch tail?
Not so
'Cause
much the race tail, but when you're riding that, I would use the 20 regular fixed tail long.
and not the
The
17.
No, not the 17. For me, maybe, but not for you. At your weight, I would say stay with the 20.
I was trying the 1500 yesterday, just kind of playing around with it because I got the full drive so I can motor up and then come back and so on. And with the 1500 and the 20-inch tail, it's harder to turn. So it was staying up, but I kind of felt like, dang, I want more speed. Like I want more speed out of this thing.
Yeah, if you're using the foil drive, then you don't have a problem getting up. So I
Yeah.
would stay with the 1125. You're not having that problem. But hey, I can get up if you all of a sudden do come down, shoot, you can hit the foil drive again and get back up again. So
Okay.
if you're in that situation, go with the 1125.
Okay. And would you even go smaller than 1125 or no?
You would have to check that out for yourself. Just see, okay, can I ride the 1300? The 1300 is basically a smaller wing in terms of lift than that 1125. Even though the 1125 is, smaller in square centimeters, it has a much more lift and much more glide than the P1300. P1300 is faster, will turn better, and so that would be the next logical step to go below the 1125.
Oh, really? So
Yeah,
you'd actually go 1125 before you'd then 1300 would seem smaller.
yeah. 1300 will seem smaller. It'll seem faster, smaller, turnier.
So 1300 will feel faster than the 1125?
Yes.
Which tail would you use?
At your size, I would still be on like the 17 or 20 tail on that one. The only time you go to, you're going to the race tail is when you start to not need as much lift and you want to go really fast. Because even a 20 race tail is almost like riding a 14 of the regular tails. That's how much lift it has. It's not like super lifty at 20. It's super, super thin. So it's made to go super fast and non-draggy, but it doesn't have the same lift as like a 20 regular tail.
You think that would be helpful on this Hawaii Kai run or not really helpful because of
If
the
you can
bumps?
get up with the 20 race tail and your foil drive with the 1125, it will be helpful. It'll be a little bit faster. It won't be as dependable on your turns, but it is definitely faster in a straight line. All about going downwind. Everybody has to dial in equipment for themselves. What do they like to ride? Oh, how do they turn? Does this feel like it's unstable? It slides because that tail is a little bit more of a faster, slidier tail if you really turn it hard. So top rippers love it, but most people, especially if I'm winging, I don't like to ride that tail at all. I would ride a regular tail with the tips down, which would kind of give me a little bit extra grip.
Yeah, it doesn't feel slidey. It doesn't like slide.
Right. But when you're going downwind, especially if you're going for speed, you're not really worried about all those turns. You're more like turning to catch speed up again, but you're not turning to do an aggressive surf style turn. You're kind of, okay, I'm going to keep going down the coast as fast as possible.
Does it make it pump easier if you're using the raised tail?
That's all debatable. Depends on, if you're a heavier rider, you'll get more out of one of the regular tails because when you stomp on it, it won't bend and flex and you'll get more out of it. So just think of it as like you're riding a 14 tail. The 20 tail is like riding a 14 tail. And a big rider doesn't like riding the 14 tail. They're not enough to stomp on back there. You kind of push it through the floor. So
I
it
mean,
all
I've been
depends on,
riding the 1125 with the 14 tail. That's what I've been
right?
riding it with.
Yeah. To ride it with the 17 short when I'm wave riding with it. I really
I
like
found
to,
that if I use the 17 short with the 1125 and it's like head high, we had these southwest swells coming in. I was getting
right?
lit. I mean, lit. I could not handle it was just so much lift. Whereas the
Well,
14 half
you can
was
always
fine.
combat that by moving your mass back. Because
Yeah.
if I can keep it down, you should be able to keep it down at your size.
So if you move the mast back, then you're just gonna keep your foot in front of the mast when you're talking about your foot
Yeah,
plate. So if like this is the mast, right? Then and this is the front of the board this way. Then you're talking about instead of being on top of the mast, you're in front.
right. There's all
Okay.
kinds of ways of, getting your balance out. Like say you're 14, if you really like the 14, you stay with the 14. If you feel like, oh God, I wish I had just a little bit more lift in the 14, then you have options to move your mass back with a 17 and get that to where you can still keep it down.
Maybe also if it's downwind because it's not big waves for the most part over here, then that extra lift makes a difference. It was only when the waves got bigger that I was like, "Oh, I'm getting lit," you know?
Yeah. Like when you're going downwind, there's not as much energy as when you're riding real waves next to shore. So think of it as, yeah, I would err towards having a lot more lift going downwind, outside in the open ocean than I would if I'm in head high surf, inside on the reef. That's way more powerful and it's way harder to hold it together.
Yeah.
Now, when you guys are going downwind, the real experts are always worried about speed. So they go smaller and smaller tails so they have less dragging and, go faster and faster. But most people in the real world that are, especially if you're learning how to do this, you're looking for more lift so that you don't stop. So there's, one class that is, the super high echelon that are really good riders. The other guys are, hey, I just want to do this with the minimal amount of suffering. So for those guys, I recommend taking bigger tails.
Okay. But but for me, if I'm using a foil drive and the issue's not getting out of the water, then you would go with the smaller tail?
Yeah, you've got a easier way of using a smaller tail when you have a foil drive for sure.
Because my thing is just once I'm up, I wanna stay up.
Well, that's when the bigger tail comes in. Or you
Okay.
have to hit your foil drive again when you come down.
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm using HA 1125 and let's say 14 tail, if I move to the race tail, would that still be similar speed to the 1300 and 14 half or 17-inch tail?
Probably not, but you're definitely gotten faster.
So if I really wanted to just go faster, I'm going on the 1300 and keep
Yeah.
trying to go fast. And 1300, you're not really using the 20-inch tail, are you?
You could, at your size, you could use it. Normally I use it with a 17 or a 14 tail when I'm riding it.
Okay.
I like the 17 tail a lot because it gives me a little bit, extra lift just in case I need it. I'm not
The
as
7
good a pumper as these young kids that can just pump forever.
the 17-inch tail also turns better, like
Yep.
substantially than the 20. All right, more configurations to play. I didn't think about that because I noticed that the 1300, the stall speed is a bit higher than the 1125, which in my mind was like, how does that work? But if you can keep it going, then it's way easier to turn too.
Yeah. It's way easier to turn it. The thing you have to think of is the reason the 1125 has so much lift and glide compared to a 1300, which is a bigger wing, is just because it's got such a big wingspan and that small core makes it a smaller, surface area. But the extra wingspan gives you the glide ability. Plus, I didn't make that wing super thin. At first, I made it thin, trying to get as super fast as possible, but then it didn't have the low end that I was making the swing for. So then I made it thicker again. And that's one of the reasons why it's can really pump at a slow speed and keep going.
Okay. So maybe I
But
gotta
for
try.
something that's that big too, it's 48 inches across. It's amazing that you could once you get used to it, you can still turn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The heavier you
You
are,
get
of course, the easier it is to turn it. But me at
yeah.
170, I can still turn it fairly well.
At first, I was scared of turning it going at higher speed, but once especially once I'm running the 14 and a half tail, thing turns. Yeah, and I was surprised, like, wow, I'm riding this thing. It's stable. Like, I'm flying. Like, even on small waves, it was like even waist high kind of stuff. You just keep going. I was like, wow, this is what the lighter guys feel like. Like, this is something else. Yeah,
Mhm.
you can go fast.
Yep.
So you got some new stuff.
Yep.
New.
Pretty new stuff. What
Mhm,
we're doing with the newer stuff is we're giving options for you can have it black or red on the RSX. So basically, let's drop like here's what the original red color would be on one of the RSX wings. This is the RSX 600, which is turning out to be one of the best tow wings for big waves now. Kalani and Kavika over on Kauai ride some of the biggest waves out of any of us for tow surfing. So they're the ones that really know when it gets big and juicy and it's on fire, what can they ride? And they
mhm.
used to always ride this TKR 80 that I built over here in Maui, and that was their go-to wing. It was their best wing, and now they're finally converting to this one where they really like the 600. Now the what it looks like in black would be this one's kind of big for the screen here, what I can see on the screen, but this is what it looks like in black. This is what it looks like in red. Some people like black and some people like the original colors. So we give them options. We can easily make them in different colors at our factory. So we give the option of what it would look like in black also. You see our
Mm,
islands are on there too. So if it's a red wing in original colors, you get some red islands. If it's going to be like a GT, it'll have a blue islands because there's blue wings. So you get options with the new wings coming in black or the original red or blue colors.
okay. And what about those new surf wings? Those high speed surf wings you just put up on?
That is the RSX line. These are, it's a whole line. It goes from a 600 to that 1075 I just showed you. This would be a 975, which is great for, you'll see guys like Max Moquin and John Eqipment ripping and prone boards with this wing. They just love the way it turns. It just rips turns. It is great for this wing, especially for doing flips behind the wake boat. This is great for wake surfing if you're an advanced rider. And winging, I really like this one. This is what I usually use most of the time in Maui winging. And then when it's a little bit bigger and faster waves, then I go to the 825 for me. Most lighter people under like 150 pounds would like this one winging in Maui better. This is at the size of 825 for windier conditions for a smaller person. This one they can control it when they're wave riding. Like my daughter really loves the 825. Most of the time, we're riding waves that are, fairly fast when we're winging, and this one you can get control of it and really, really control the turns. I ride it when it gets faster over here also. If it gets bigger and faster, I go straight to the 825 also. I like this with like a 12-inch fixed tail long.
They're smaller, but how would that compare turning wise and lift wise and so on to like a GT?
It's a little bit faster and a little bit easier to turn at speed because they are faster. They handle the speed a little bit easier than the GT. The GT is a little bit thicker wing, so it doesn't have the same speed, but the GT will have a little bit more forgiveness at the low end. It'll be easier to get up. It'll be easier not to push it through the floor until you get moving. These wings, you want to try and get moving forward before you stomp on them a little bit
Mhm.
more than you would a GT. So this 975 is close to a GT 1050 in size. The 1050 will have better low end. GT 1050 still turns unreal, but this one is like another level of speed and turnability. But you need, to not stomp on it until you get going. That's the difference. The GT and these wings are similar in style. Medium aspect, really turny wings.
So the RSX is what you would consider medium aspect,
Yes.
but the RS would be high aspect or no?
RS are more high aspect wings.
Okay. So like RSX
R
is kind of in the middle ish.
It's sort of in the middle, and the X is more for speed. So the RS is more of a high aspect wing. Our original wings that we came out with high aspect. The RSX is kind of like a thinner, faster version of a GT. It's what it is. So it
Okay.
turns unreal, but it's faster. So like
Like
say
a
you're
GT
towing
plus.
or something. Yeah, it's like a GT plus. Say you're towing or something and you can't keep up with the speed, then the RSX swings is the ones to go to. That or an RS 650 HA is also a great towing wing because it has pretty good speed.
So once you're up and riding the wave, the RSX is going to be faster and perform better.
Yes.
So the only benefit on the GT is it's a little bit more maybe forgiving and gets up out of the water easier.
Yes. Gets up out of the water easier. It's more forgiving. It's easier when you're first, trying to rip on waves and stuff. And you get, you know, when you're in Maui, you've got plenty of wind to burn. There's tons of wind and, it's not a problem getting up. But if you're like on the mainland or maybe Oahu and you're like, oh, it's not all that windy. It would be easier to ride a GT. You got to also think of, I try to tell people that you can always take a bigger tail and ride a smaller wing. So don't be afraid to put a 17-inch tail on something that, hey, I'm riding my 975 or my 1075. Don't be afraid to put on a 17 tail if you're worried that the wind's not strong enough to ride it. When it's lighter wind, you can handle a bigger tail easier. You're not getting all that speed and stuff. So don't be afraid to put on a bigger tail to enhance what your range of your smaller wings.
Okay. So when would you use the RSX versus the P series?
The P series is mostly I use that for pumping when I'm looking at the conditions and there's a lot of people out there and it's hard to catch waves and I'm not getting much bang for my buck. So I'll put on like that P 1125 and I'll go around and pump around and catch 5 waves per one and I get more out of my session. When I go to like one of these RSXs, when I'm like stand up foiling, say it's light wind or it's variable and I'm stand up foiling, I use the RSX 975 when it gets big and it's fast and you're just going to go out there and be ripping and you're not worried about, hey, I'm not catching waves today. You're definitely going to catch waves, but I don't want to get pounded or whatever. And then that's when I like to go to an RSX and you start ripping turns.
So if you're running to go kind of milk it and go as far as you can, pump around and so on using P.
Yeah, I'm using P, one of the P wings. I
Okay.
Depending on how big it is, it depends on what wing I choose. If it's super small, I can go to a P 1500 and pump around even better than I do on an 1125. But in the wintertime over here, usually I'll be on 1125. I've used it and it's been head high down there, and I still can manage the 1125 with a 17 short. So, the waves are a little bit slower at Ka'a, but shoot, it's still, head high. And I can get away with turning that thing and then I can catch almost anything I want because I can basically flat water paddle up that wing.
Hmm.
It was funny the other day. I'm like paddling in. I missed the wave, but I'm up in the air out the back. I just turn around and go pump back out to the next one and catch it before I came down. So it was like, oh, wow, that was kind of convenient. I was already up, missed my wave, but I turned around and caught another one. So it's kind of fun to be able to pump around like that when it's, you want to make sure you get your share.
Well, you're getting more out of the HA 1125 than the 1500 on days like that then.
Yes, I usually can ride it easier because the 1500 when it's head high, it's a little bit hard for me to keep it down. If I was a big dude, I could ride it. If I was a big dude who wanted to pump around like I am with the 1125, then a big dude could ride it. But I don't go to the 1500 until it's about less than waist high, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I can ride that today and pump around, like a young boy.
If you were 200 pounds, would you keep the same kind of preference?
It depends on the size of the wave, but I can ride with quite a lot of lift. So I would say the 200-pound guy would still be on the 1125. most 200-pound guys. If you were, really good 200-pound guy, you might be able to get away with the P1500, pump around really well. But you have to be an advanced rider to be able to handle that wing and, head high surf. It's a pretty big wing in terms of lift.
Mhm.
I'm sure you know that once you've got on that, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this thing goes up.
Yeah. When you on that wing, when you're nearing like 20 miles per hour or something on the wave, it's like, I don't want to make that turn.
Yeah. Oh, no,
I don't want to make the turn.
definitely no. That
Yeah.
one was made specifically for slower water going downwind or pumping a really small surf. So even when I go to the mainland and I'm riding in, like, say, super small, choppy wind swell, I like the 1500 because I can stay up a long time on it. And if the conditions are really bad, I can just keep pumping and stay up on my downwind runs. Where that's when I like, that's what it was made for. Was flat water paddle up, going in choppy, bay type conditions, and being able to stay up, very easily.
If the water got a little bit faster or a little bit windier, then you'd be on your 1300,
Well, I
the
go to the
P13.
1125 would be next, then the
Yeah.
1300, and then, once it gets real good, I've got all kinds of options.
What about if you're on Oahu?
If I was on Oahu, I would be riding probably the X990. It's like a high aspect P&L 185.
Okay.
So like the P1300 is the advanced version of the P&L 185. The 990 is kind of almost the same. So you would say the same wingspan, but a smaller cord. There's about 20 of those showing up here, or I'm not sure how many were supposed to show up this week before Chinese New Year was closing the factory. But there are going to be some of those available over here. But by the time your video comes out, it'll probably be all gone. But it'd be nice to get people, testing that in real life conditions. Like, for instance, we were, doing the race on Oahu, and Tomo was using one of our super fast wings. We got a new prototype that he was testing. He took off, one of the first guys up. He's going, but he only made it about a half a mile before he came down.
Mm.
And he said he just didn't know the conditions and he didn't have his mast right. But he was in second place right next to Kane. So he was like super excited, like, oh, this thing is fast. But looking back on it, he goes, if I had the 990, I would have made it to the finish line. So he, you look at it afterwards and go, oh, I probably would have had a much better result on the 990, but man, it was fun to be up in the front, so a younger kid on it who could pump real good might have done really well on that wing. Like our guy, Max Moquin. I wish he could have come to the race, but he's in school and he's doing the state championships, canoe paddling. So, couldn't get him to go. He had to do a bunch of homework on Sunday because for Monday. So what Tomo was like, God, I think Max would have done really well on this wing, but I couldn't do it because I wasn't familiar with the conditions and I had my mast too far back. I didn't have enough lift. It's a tricky run compared to what we do on Maui over there at that Hawaii Kai run. Because there's so much chop going on and stuff that you've got to learn how to ride that.
Yeah.
You want me to go get that 990 so you can see it?
Yeah, let's see it. Let's see it for sure.
This is the X990.
Okay.
So it has winglets on it like a P&L 185. It's higher aspect. Let me compare this to.
Wait, why did you put winglets versus the step?
The step is maybe just a hair slower than the winglets, but it has way more control. But for making a super fast downwind wing, wanted to get away from the step, so it's a little bit slipperier through the water. We're not worried about control so much when we're going downwind. Now this, is the P1300. And this, just so you can see the difference, they're about the same width. This one is 1 inch wider than a P1300, but a lot more high aspect. So basically you're getting a even faster version than this.
You can hold it up higher.
And it's a 990 and this is a 1300. So there's a lot of difference in square area, but this one is way faster since it's a little bit thinner and it's higher aspect. So this is a faster version of this one. It won't have as much lift at low end as this one, but you can chase down more stuff because you're faster. So when you're going, fast, fast, fast over stuff, the 990 will chase it down, especially if you keep your mast hot or your board really high up out of the water. You want to keep this close to the surface. And I've noticed that when I get it really high out of the water, I can pump over stuff way easier than when I'm lower in the water with
Okay.
this swing.
Can I see the tips? Can you show both tips?
Tips has a really small winglet on it. I don't know if you can see that. I toned down the winglets on these ones. Normally, we used to have winglets that were like this big. I started making them smaller and smaller so that it still disturbs the wingtip vortices problems, with your little mini tornadoes coming off the wingtips, but a little bit smaller so less chance of you catching yourself in the leg or on your hand wing when you're winging.
How does that one surf compared to those RSX ones?
Not even close. RSX surfs way better. Anything with steps surfs better, has better pitch control. You can go through white water easier. When you got the winglets and this wingspan, it's harder to turn it. If you're in smaller waves, like, knee high, you're on the mainland or you're at, Kailua and it's barely breaking, you could turn this thing. But once it gets fast and a little bit steeper, there's no way to beat an RSX wing. The RSX wings are just confident when you're making turns.
So that one would be the progression after the 1300.
Yes.
So you'd go
That would be the way to
1500.
go after the 1300.
Yeah. 1500, 1125, 1300, then the 990.
Yes.
What size rider could ride the 990?
Almost any size rider can ride it. Just depends on you match the conditions for when you need it. Like Tomoko, she's a really, lightweight rider, but she wants a light air, smaller bump wing that she can ride. She wants to get one of these and try it out because she's riding the P1300, which is a little bit big for her. She wants to go fast like she does on the next size smaller than this, that it doesn't have as much range when it's light wind. So you could be a small rider like her, or you could be a bigger rider like, that weighs 200 pounds.
For like head high kind of waves or and bigger, you know what I mean? Chest high, head high, bigger kind of waves. What would be the ideal surf wing then to go fast enough and still be able to turn in the RSX series for like my size?
You'd want like the 1075, the biggest one.
Okay.
Like the biggest one, and then you can still turn that thing. It's very easy to initiate turns. It's very stiff. It has a little bit of a anhedral to it. So you can see how the 1075 has a little bit more curve to it. And this thing is really stiff. Dave Kalama and Jeremy like to ride this thing downwind too when it's really windy in Maui. They just love the way it turns. Dave, when he goes downwind, just loves to turn. He's not more into, I want to go fast and pump over everything and, race the young guys. He's just blasting turns all the way down and having a blast. And he really likes this one.
What's the tail that he's using with that?
Dave, I think, is usually on about a 14 size tail. Same thing with Jeremy.
For the bigger guys, they don't normally go under a 14 half tail, huh?
Not usually. Not the bigger guys. They'll stay at around 14 or, somewhere close to that. The smaller guys like Tomo and Johnny Hagan or Max will ride, down to 12 size tails and get on those smaller, less draggy tails and go a little bit faster.
When you're talking about like being able to handle the increased speed and lift, right? Like when I'm riding, let's say a 1500 or even the 1125, and what I'm trying to do is go as far as I can to kind of practice this downwind. So I'm in like smaller stuff, maybe, stomach high-ish or whatever. But then when I get into kind of the edge of where the surf break is, it could be head high. So then when I move into that, I start to get like lit. What's your technique or thoughts on being able to handle that kind of speed and lift at that point?
You got to obviously get more on your front leg. If you're strapless, move your feet forward, just to be able to handle the extra lift. I just basically get more up on the front leg. I'll kind of back off the speed a little bit by, turning one way or another. And then when the foil starts to come down a little bit, then get on there, the front leg, and hold it there. So you got to recorrect, how you're riding. So like stall it any way you can a little bit, let it drop a little bit. Then when it comes down a little bit, then get on the front and let it go. You don't want to be, I'm going higher, 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 and just keep going there. You got to stall one way or another, let it fall a little bit, then get on the front leg and go. Because once it starts to come up, you get on the front leg, it might not come down again. So you got to somehow stall it a little bit, drop it, the nose, and then get on it and go.
Okay. You're not trying to plane it and go as fast as you possibly can.
No, once you start to lose control, the only way to get it in control is to drop it a little bit, then get on the front again.
Hmm.
While you know that you've got tons of lift, now I can get a lot on the front. If you get too much on the front and before that, you might come down. So as soon as you feel you got way too much lift, try to stall it a little bit, drop it, get on it.
Okay. I was kind of thinking like, oh man, is it just I can't handle this speed and I'm still supposed to be right on top this, back foot right on top the mast and I should just be able to control it better or what? But maybe not.
A lot of it is anticipation too. It's like, okay, I see that this wave's coming. It's going to get way more, speed's going to come in. I'm going to get way more lift. So I anticipate it and like move your feet forward, get on the front earlier before it can come up. So a lot of it is anticipation. Like when we're going downwind and you're all of a sudden you see a big wave you're dropping into, it's like anticipate it, get on the front before it starts to lift you. So think of anticipating that, hey, a lot of speed's coming, plan for it.
How much farther forward are you moving your back foot in a situation like that? Or do you not move your back foot?
I don't really move it a whole lot. I do have big foot straps on my stand-up board where I can move my foot. I got a foot strap that's like about 10 inches on the front and the back. So I can move a little bit. I really like foot straps for me because I'm just comfortable in foot straps. But I will move, like 2 or 3 inches if it's, really starts to get critical.
Oh, so you have a foot strap on the back too?
Yes.
Oh. So you're
Sometimes I won't use it when I'm going paddling downwind, but other times I use it. Definitely I like to use it when I'm surfing. Way easier for me to surf with it. More control for me, and I just feel more comfortable in straps because I grew up windsurfing, so I'm a strap guy.
okay. So your feet are pretty much locked into place for the most part, kind of for the most part, right?
It's not locked since I have that 10-inch, strap. I've got leeway to move 3 inches one way
Mm.
or the other. So it's not like I'm super tight in there, but I do have the confidence that, I'm not going to blast right off of the board because of the straps are there.
You ever have a problem getting out of the strap when you wipe out?
No, I'm pretty good at jumping out of the straps.
Okay.
It's either also it's always the same thing too. The rule is you either stay in both foot straps or you get out of both foot straps. Never leave one foot in. One foot in is bad. That's when you really hurt yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
You might be able to make it 2 feet in, but one foot in, never a good idea.
Would you ever ride the RSX with the race tail?
I don't usually ride it. I don't really like riding the race tail when I'm winging or stand up because I like the more grip of the other tails.
Mhm. The only time you ride it
Hardly
then
ever
is
ride.
a downwind. You're trying to go fast.
Yeah, I only ride it when I'm going downwind. I don't even ride it winging to go fast. I just ride it downwind.
Okay. You ever ride the 26-inch tail
There's no 26, there's a
or the
23
23?
inch.
23? Is it
Yeah,
23?
I've ridden that. Yeah, I've ridden that with the 2200 and the 2600 GTs. It's if it's really, really light wind, then you don't notice the difference that much. And it's easier to get up and stay up on the transitions when it's only blowing 6 knots. So, yes, I have ridden it.
I tell you, I have not touched my 1770, the GTs at all since I've been playing with the high aspect ones.
Uh-huh.
at all. And it's amazing that I can be on 1125 in my mind because I'm so used to like my go-to being the 1770, even in like chest high kind of size waves, you know? It's kind of amazing. And now I'm even thinking I need something smaller so I can actually turn. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
if
of
you
awesome.
still like to go on to that, that faster style, then go down to the 1300 and try that
Okay. Okay.
from your 1125.
From the
Then
11,
after
12.
that, you try one of these 990s, but they don't turn as predictable, but they are definitely faster. You like pick up a whole nother level of speed. That's probably the wing that we'll be using at the Cocoa Beach Foil Surf Racing League when we do the pumping race in Cocoa Beach every year. That this year, that's probably what most of our riders will be riding because once you get up with that thing, it pumps great and it is fast, especially if you're a prone guy. You have no problems pumping these wings around. Those guys can pump better than a guy on a, stand up just naturally because they're on a small board. But that'll probably be one of the favorite wings I imagine for our team riders when we get there.
Even the heavier guys?
Yep. Because the guys that we'll have there will be, you know, pretty good riders. If you're going to make it to that race, it's not usually the lower key riders.
Mhm,
They're
mhm.
the guys that really know how to pump if you're going to do that race. These guys, they take off, they pump down the course, and then a lot of times there's wind and they have to pump back against the wind. And it is not easy,
Mhm.
or you run back up the beach. So it depends on what kind of conditions we get at Coco this year, but it is definitely elite pumpers that are in that race.
I think I probably ask you this every time, but when you pump, like where are your feet when you're pumping in relationship to the mast?
In general, most of the good pumpers are in front of the mast with their back foot.
How much in front?
They're probably, anywhere from on the front edge of the mast to 3 inches in front of it.
Oh,
Depends on how light they are. The heavier you are, the easier it is to be further back and still pump well. But really lighter riders will move, really far forward. They get way far forward and just pump from up there.
and in your mind, then, what are the things that I need to be thinking about to improve my pumping?
Improve your pumping, you got to have those bigger wings at your size. Make sure you got big wings and, maybe try to get your foot over the front edge of the mast and see if that helps your pumping. You'll lose a little bit of your turnability, but once you get used to it, you'll be able to still turn from there, but you'll be able to pump a little bit easier. Everybody is a little bit different, and depending on what kind of foil they are or foil brand, they pump a little bit different. Some foils are pumping the back foot,
Yeah.
like I've been on a unifoil and lifts and stuff, and I'm pumping on the back foot more. We're on a GoFoil, you're pumping on the front foot more. You'll watch some guys that pump looks like they're just pushing both feet at the same time. So for me, it's more like I'm on the front foot and let it up, push it down, let it up, push it down. A lot of the really good pumpers won't pump like that. They're pumping more both feet at the same time, or a lot of back foot and then down. So there's a bunch of different styles of pumping. So it has a lot to do with your skill level, your weight, and what your foil feels like. Certain foils are a lot of back foot. Ours is more like on the front foot. So you got to adapt your pumping technique to which foil you're riding.
What else can you do to make when you pump the movement go forward more than like up and down?
That's all of, according to how you're balancing your stuff. And for me, I have to get it up high in the water column and drive the front down for me to go
Okay.
forward. Other
Okay.
foils, like I was just saying, is on the back foot. So it's not all the same on each foil.
So it's not like you're trying to, on the GoFoils at least, pump it hard on the back foot and it rises and then you just let the thing drop on its own. You're actually putting more pressure onto the front
You're
foot.
putting more pressure onto the front. Yes.
Okay. All
If
right.
you
That's
watch somebody, some of the other GoFoil riders might do it a little bit differently though. So, but that's how I do it.
okay. That'll give
I'm
me.
massing the front.
I've been trying to figure that out. Like the guys out there, oh man, I'm pumping so much. My back leg is so sore. And I'm thinking, what? My front leg is sore. So,
Yeah, that's on a different brand. Like
yep.
you get on, say, an Armstrong, a unifoil, a lift is a lot of back foot pressure, where the GoFoil and maybe Access is a little bit more front foot pressure. So it depends on what foil brand you're on and where they're balancing and how you ride it.
Okay.
Like I got on a unifoil, I was riding, I was like, oh my God, I got no lift here. How do I ride this thing? And I had to like totally shift to the back, move all of my foot straps back, the mass forward. It's just total different way of riding. So you have to get used to whatever brand you're riding and how to ride each one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Is there anything I missed that you wanted to cover?
We could go through, what each one of these wings is good for. Like I had said before, that
Okay.
the RSX 600 is probably the best big wave foil. You can handle a lot of speed and this thing still turns. The smaller winger guys are the really ripper guys like Max and Caden. Love this one for wing, doing their flips and everything because they're fast and turny. You go to the 825, that is more for guys that are, where do I put the 825? Got so many wings around here. The 825, I would say, is great for the high wind winging and waves. When it gets a little bit, you're having problems turning on the waves while you're winging. This is the one you want to have. Lighter riders under 150 pounds, excellent wing for high wind wing. You get to the next size up will be the 975. This is a really good wing for, like I was saying before, wake foiling, for doing flips and stuff, the advanced wake foilers or the advanced prone riders who want to rip hard turns proning, or guys that are my size under most conditions winging when the waves are up. I could turn this one really well. If it gets bigger, I would go to a smaller one like the 825, but most of the time I can ride the 975. Then the next wing you'd go up to would be the 1075. This would be more for a bigger rider or a bigger rider weight foiling or winging, or prone and smaller waves. Like John Eqipment likes this one in smaller waves when he can rip around and make some really aggressive turns. So the RSX are for aggressive, fast wave riding is what they're for doing those kind of rail to rail turns.
And 1075 is the biggest one.
That's the biggest RSX. Yes.
Okay. And then once you're actually surfing it and so on, the comparison in the GT to the 1075 would be 1250.
The next bigger one.
No, what would
say?
be like the comparative feel, like lift and feel?
The GT is similar to the RSX. They are, similar, very turny wings. The GTs will have a little bit more low end. So you'll be able to handle a little bit, get up in lighter winds, or have a little bit better on the low end. It's like this is a 1075. The GT 1250 would be the next step above this.
Oh,
When
okay.
you want to go into a turny wing that is bigger than this one, I'd go to the GT 1250, which is still one of our best wings. It's just easy to ride. It's great for lighter air winging for, most places until, you get to, under 15 or 12 knots, then you got to go to something bigger.
Okay. Okay. So if somebody is riding their bigger rider and they ride like the GT 1400 quite a bit, then the move to the 1075 RSX is a pretty big jump.
I recommend that's a pretty good jump for, a logical jump to go to. It's like you go down two wing sizes. Like say, for instance, you're a big rider, you go with a 2200, you jump over the 1700, you go to a 1400, and then maybe down to, 1050. Keep skipping like two, so you don't have to get every single one unless you're really want, the optimum. You're
Okay.
not worried about conserving your money.
Yeah.
But for most riders, I would say 1770, I skip over the 1400 to the 1250. Then I go down to a 1050 or something. I don't skip two on the smaller wing. I go, they're a little bit closer together on the smaller wings, but on bigger wing sizes, I would go 2600, 1770, 1250. So I skip one on each one of those. That's
Okay.
how I would go.
Okay. Okay.
Don't be afraid to skip one size there unless you're like, you find out later on that, hey, I really wish I would have got that one. Bigger riders like the 1400, the anybody like 170 and down likes 1250 better than the 1400.
Yeah, the 1250 is, that thing turns, man. It's fast. It
Yeah,
turns. That's a great wing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great wing. I
Okay.
still use that wing a lot, and I made it what 2 or 3 years ago, and I still use that a lot.
Yeah. It's easier to ride too. It's predictable. It turns tight. Yeah. Can handle size.
Yeah, if it's super light wind and I have waves, I've said this before, I'll put a big tail on that 1250 just so I can handle the lighter wind. But once I get out into the surf that's overhead high, I can still kind of handle that wind. Or if I put on my 1770, it's like, whoa, it's a little unruly out here, you know.
Yeah.
So remember, you always have options putting on a bigger tail to get a little bit more low end out of your favorite wing that you want to ride.
Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Well, once again, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You're the best.
All right, Evans.
Okay.
Good
Thanks, Alex.
talking to you. All
Oh, you too.
right, see ya.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please comment, give us a thumbs up, and see you next time.